The Homesteads to Hollywood podcast is a CJSW original production funded by the Radio Meter Program Grant through the Community Radio Fund of Canada. In the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we would also like to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. This includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, which includes the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. The city of Calgary, traditionally recognized by the Blackfoot name of Mohkinstsis, is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6.
Part 4, Film Fatale.
I'm going to say, in particular in that era, the dynamics of what was going on, like cultural diversity, LGBTQ, everybody was trying to define their own communities. And they were coming together and bringing it all in very strong. There is this corporate world up here, but that's one of the reasons why I stayed here, because those communities and the strength and extremely cool stuff people were making here was really unbelievable. It really was. It's, I know a lot of people talk about Toronto or Vancouver, but what was being created here was really on the fringe, and it was excelling.
From Cool Runnings to The Revenant and Brokeback Mountain to The Last of Us, cinematic star power didn't just happen to Alberta. In fact, the province has a long and illustrious history in film that has developed into an internationally renowned industry. From Homesteads to Hollywood, Alberta takes center stage in this 10-part exploration into how things came to be and where they're going. My name is Liam Daw.
And I'm Ingrid Vargas. Together we'll be peeling back the layers of Alberta's intricate film industry to answer the question, just how did we get here? There are many elements that each play their role in this ecosystem, such as a storied past, a vibrant underground, a deep talent pool in the trades, and of course, the continuous run-on blockbusters.
I feel that I came from an area that was so small and this melting pot that when I came here, I actually was at the dorm at the YWCA, so very much downtown. And I just thought, man, I've been to Africa and all through Europe, and I'm actually experiencing culture shock right now being here. It was very different growing up in Cape Breton and being here. I went to Dalhousie University and I studied technical sonography, so this beautiful European approach to high concept design. Loved it. Then I did that backpacking trip overseas for a while, and when I came back, I ran into someone who said, I think someone in Calgary is looking for someone to work in their theater. I'm like, sure. It was just some woman who picked me up when I was hitchhiking. And I said, okay, great. And then within 4 weeks, I was out here working at Stage West. Yeah, there were so many things that were different, like growing up in Cape Breton, the seas are always moving and it's so active, and here there were mountains, and I remember thinking they were pretty but not really knowing how to interact with them. And then I started realizing that there's such this beautiful, deep richness in the art that was being created here. And so even though I kept trying to go to Vancouver to hit the Pacific Ocean, I just found that my whole world started to gel together because of the artists that were here. And then someone took me mountain biking, and then I went, okay, now I have my nature and I have my art all coming together. And I love living here.
That is the voice of Sandi Summers, a Calgary-based filmmaker, writer, educator, stage designer, and once upon a time, folk guitarist. Sandi is what born and raised Albertans like to call a transplant, hailing from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. However, during her 30-plus years in the Wildrose province, she has helped cultivate a momentous space for queer artists with that hometown type of love. Before falling into filmmaking, Sandi had originally entered Calgary's art scene through theater with a background in sonography. Today, she has multiple feature films and countless other shorts and side projects.
Sandi's journey to becoming an award-winning filmmaker in Alberta goes back several decades, to a time where her and her peers within Calgary's cinemasphere existed on the frontiers of queer filmmaking and its social embrace, or rather, lack thereof.
So the 90s were a time of personal politics and also gay rights. I feel a lot of my initial projects were because of that in particular, that it was my response to being diminished, whether you wanted to be or not, and where the LGBTQ plus community was considered not community standard, and you had no rights to stand up for yourself in a job, or if you were renting a place, you could just be axed and let go. Although perhaps I may have been looked upon as being political, all I was doing was living a life that had the exact same rights as the person next to me, but somehow that was not looked upon it the same way. So there were companies and organizations like Kiss and Tell. So myself, especially when I saw that there were no lesbian work out there at all, myself and another person did a project called Phantasmagoria, Sexing the Lesbian Imaginary. And it was a gallery. It was a video installation. It was super interesting because we were from across Canada, and we would talk about mostly censorship. And what we realized is that we just knew we were going to be censored. We censored ourselves before we could be censored. And then we decided what would happen if we tried to remove our own personal censorship. And we got a beautiful project out of it. It went like wildfire in America. A lot of people loved it. And in Canada, we just got death threats. We had undercover policemen at the opening because of threats to our lives. The news, we had a lot of coverage, and it was horrible. The news was asking, where our tax money going? I'm like, I pay taxes too. Like, I'm a part of that. What are you talking about? But it did deal with, lesbian erotica and fantasy and sex. And nobody just felt that there was a place for that. It was a challenging time. And that was one of the reasons why we did put Phantasmagoria together, because why should I live under a radar? Why can't I just be the same as everyone else? I don't understand why. And there was an article that said, lock up your daughters, the lesbians are coming to town. And so we decided to call our group, our collective, Lock Up Your Daughters. Our organization was Lock Up Your Daughters, which, just took the power away from the voices that were trying to hold us down. But you know what? Talking about a career starter, good or bad, but what happened in that was because there was so much manipulation from media and from community that were completely against the queer community getting any money or doing anything of importance, was that I learned very quickly that if I really put all of myself into my work, I don't need everybody to like it, but you can't take it away from me. And that was one of the most important things that I really learned that helped the rest of my career, was that I went through such hell through all that, but got so much out of it.
Sandi's work, like any other filmmakers, is unapologetically her own. Despite this resolve, weathering threats and constant disapproval from the province she calls home put her will to the absolute test.
Keep in mind, this period of time in the early 1990s coexisted with Premier Ralph Klein's approach to governing Alberta through austerity. The few existing opportunities for funding arts projects dried up as the province slashed their budgets. These circumstances added to the tension that already subsisted between queer artist communities and the cities they were trying to develop a space within.
Well, there were a few times I did want to run. I think the resiliency is that I've understood that this is where I want to be and this is who I am. And so I'm just going to stick here. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to find my community that will stay with me. And I think there's a lot of people who stayed. There's a lot of people who said, I don't need to go somewhere else. The qualities that I look forward in my future are right here. And I think there's so much that has to do with that, like what your goals are, what your dreams are, what inspires you to do something. And like I said, I might have been inspired to stay because of Phantasmagoria, because of being a part of the first queer festival that everybody's trying to cancel. And the resilience is fighting through that and saying, I have as many rights as anyone. And I refuse to run away because you don't feel that's right. I can also say that cold weather pulls people together if you're going to stay here. Like, I think that there's a beauty in the people who've stayed here, and the resilience comes from other people knowing that it's a good place and it can be better if we stay, and we work towards that.
And stayed she did. Over the course of her career, Sandi has become internationally recognized for her work that ranges from experimental to documentary, and short length to feature films, of which she has directed 2, Ice Blue and most recently, Haley Rose.
Ma, take her to see Philly and she'll stay. Asked me to stay.
Philly? He moved to the city. Like so many others who abandon their family roots.
No, Ma, not that Philly.
The dead Philly from the inlet?
No, the other dead one.
Hello?
With the boat?
Why, by Jesus, would I want to see the other Philly?
How should I know what you want? I know nothing about you. Maybe you're rich, maybe you're married. Maybe I'm a grandmother and don't know it.
Ma?
How on God's green earth did you find that out?
Are you really limp-wristed?
Lesbian, Mom. Say lesbian.
Lesbian. What? Marshall's sister Wendy's cousin Mallory's ex-boyfriend Hamish from the Cove, not the Tip, was in Banff on the run from the Manties. Long story. Anyway, met you at Headbanging Bar. Tried to pick you up, and you said, "Go F yourself, I'm a dyke."
What? Oh, yeah, that was eons ago. And it made its way back here.
It made the gossip page.
Well, that's what cities will do to you, make you go all off and hedonistic.
And the backwoods will make you back-ass and ignorant.
Is that why you ran off? Because you're a bean flickerer?
Ugh. Lobster! Tomorrow, we'll take you for lobster and you to see Philly and find the boat.
All right. Call me when you're ready.
Don't you have work?
Tomorrow! Don't keep me waiting.
While her contributions to Alberta's newfound voice for independent film stood out, Sandi was not alone in her endeavors. Several Calgary-based filmmakers were collaboratively shaping what the medium could look like, and it certainly wasn't status quo. Although obscured by predominantly Western values, Alberta's history reflects diversity in many important ways. For a long time, immigrant minorities have lived and worked within the province, but haven't always had proportional representation, especially in the arts sector.
The diasporic experience is something many Albertans can relate to. Whether it's geographical or not, distance can present itself in a variety of forms. This can weigh heavily on sexual or cultural identity. In the case of filmmaker Michelle Wong, it was both.
I had my start in film. Actually, it was in Edmonton. Bonnie Thompson and a man named Graydon McRae, who was the executive director of what was called the Northwest Centre in Edmonton, was a part of the National Film Board. The National Film Board had offices across the country. And so there was one in Edmonton. And at the time when I finished teaching, I was living in Edmonton. And so I went to kind of like one of those just meet and greets with people getting together and stuff. And I met Bonnie and I met Graydon. They were very welcoming, and I ended up talking to someone else who was in an agency, and he was able to give me some money to make a film. I've always been a person that loved films. I grew up in a small town in northern Alberta, and there was a theater. And so every Saturday it was kind of fun to take 25 cents and go across the street and watch Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or some kind of movies like that. So I've actually always been attached to watching films. But I guess when it officially started happening was I got a degree as a teacher and taught drama for 3 years. And I just realized I wasn't very happy doing it. It felt like I was filling out a crossword puzzle that I would erase in the summertime and then redo in the fall and the winter and the spring. So I always had a passion for film. So when I left my job teaching, I took a year off and I actually moved to Calgary. So I'm a person that started, like everyone else, going to their local film cooperative to work with people just making films. And now I've been in the industry for over 30 years, and the majority of my career has been in Alberta. I approached the Calgary Society of Independent Filmmakers, which was a film cooperative, and that is a place where I consider my home in terms of my first exposures. And it was there that I met people that were also interested in film. That was probably in something like 1990-ish. When I was there, I met some people and we worked on my first documentary, at least shooting footage for it, which became an NFB documentary called Return Home, which was my first film. But it really had the start and support in Calgary through the Calgary Society of Independent Filmmakers.
Through a recommitment to institutions like the National Film Board, opportunities for independent filmmakers were on the rise. Since 1978, the Calgary Society of Independent Filmmakers, or CSIF, has been a cornerstone of Alberta's indie film scene and has a legacy of its own. Something we'll definitely explore in depth later in the series.
Service productions dwindled in the mid-1990s as Hollywood's obsession with Albertan landscapes had seemingly plateaued. Because of this, the independent industry and creative expression gained a lot of momentum locally. CSIF was a harbinger for the success of Calgary filmmakers during that time and the eras that followed. For Michelle, it played a pivotal role in connecting her not only to the local community, but also to a larger network that eventually led her out of province.
And then there was a program in Montreal, and it was called New Initiatives in Film. And it was like 1990, 91. And it was a 10-day intensive workshop created by Studio D, which is the women's studio. And they invited 10 women from across the country to go to Montreal to experience making a film from beginning to end. And so I had, I guess, a rough cut of the footage that I had shot about my grandparents that I brought along with me when I was chosen to be in this program. And it was a really incredible experience, really neat experience, because the film board at that time had quite a few people working there. And it was like the best of the best. What was really exciting about it is the kind of culture and creativity that was going on there. So I thought, oh, great, I can get my film done. I can get the help of the film board when I'm there. I didn't know that would take 4 years, but I worked odd jobs. That was my starving artist phase. Like when you're young, you don't have aspirations to buy a house. You don't have all the pressures of getting married and having a family, right? You're still in your 20s and you're still exploring. That's, I guess, the advantage of being there at the time was going into a new place, like moving from redneck Alberta to Montreal, cosmopolitan, different language, different culture. And of course, it felt like a fish out of water, obviously, a very small fish in a very large pond. Even though I had a Chinese family at home, my experience outside of that home was very westernized. And so I had this dichotomy within myself I didn't even know I had. Like there were all these other things about me, and then there was this cultural part of me too, that I wasn't really educated about that in school. All I got was the stereotype about Chinese people and the way they sound and the way they eat and all that kind of stuff. So there was a very interesting experience that I went through when I was at the film board making my film, was really deconstructing through looking at my grandparents and understanding who they were, what they experienced as immigrants coming to Canada, and the sacrifices they had to make. And for me, I really didn't understand it. For me, it was crouched in things like, well, when I give my grandparents a hug, it's like hugging wood because they don't seem to get any hugs back. And I thought that meant they didn't kind of love me because they didn't express it the way I wanted them to express it. But of course, they were expressing it, right? And it was up to me to understand and deconstruct. So I did go through a process of learning about my own internalized racism, learning about who and what it meant to really be a Chinese person in Canada, to understand my own family and appreciate it rather than judge it. Because, when you're young, you think you know everything. And then you get in your 20s and you realize you know nothing.
Yeah. I felt awkward, but it was okay. Something in me had changed. I spent all those years avoiding my family and myself. I never appreciated my grandparents. I didn't think they had anything to teach me because they were old, part of the past. But the stories took me on a journey towards the truth, that my family isn't unemotional, that they love me in ways that go beyond words and actions. Their gift was a new sense of identity, an understanding of who I am, and an appreciation of where I've come from. I realize now that it's okay to live in both cultures. My journey is only just beginning, and I'm finally coming home.
For Michelle, filmmaking was an experience of self-discovery and homecoming. There's a common misconception among prairie filmmakers that success can't be accomplished if they stay on the plains. While it's good to explore new horizons, there's something to be said about the influence that the landscape and environment have on our internal selves and artistic fulfillment. Ultimately, the grass is greener where you water it, and there's no place like home.
When I was done the film and finished, they're actually grooming me to stay. They were looking at other projects, and they wanted to explore more about Chinese-Canadian perspectives. But I truly, in going away, and I think this is something that happens to people when they go away, is they start realizing what it is that they truly love about being where they're from. And I had to admit that of the 4 years I was at the film board, I actually did not have a creative idea of my own in the time that I was there. I mean, I was finishing my documentary, but I was so far away from my home, my stories, the land, that I didn't have, other than wanting to finish my film, I realized that I needed to go back to Alberta, that I was born there, I grew up there, and there was something about it. Honestly, through my career, I've done 3 other projects, and they actually are all set in this small town I grew up in, which is this French-Canadian and Ukrainian little town of 5,000 surrounded by 3 Indigenous groups. And that was my home, and all of my stories actually stem from that. Calgary remains a transitory town, but what's good about it is you can come into it and meet people and be invited to participate right away. Whereas other cities, you can go there and it may not be as sort of rigid, but then the opportunity is you got to stand in line and pay your dues, and those dues can be very deep.
It became evident that within Alberta's film industry, there was a need for a space in which women could find community and support for reaching their goals. Enter Herland, an organization that sought to bring films by and about women to a larger audience. Amongst other founders, Sandi Summers and Michelle Wong have been driving forces behind Herland over its 3-decade history. While their intentions stemmed from love, passion, and camaraderie, some people were extremely opposed to the initial concept.
I guess one of the most political, I suppose, events that happened, there was a year where we had invited a filmmaker, Kika Thorne, from out of Calgary to come and, educate and share the experience of how to make a film on Super 8, right? For some of the information, the pamphlet that was created was a poster. It was a large poster, 24 by 36, let's say, and on it was all the programming and all the descriptions of everything and all the nights and stuff. And then at the bottom, it talked about this workshop that was being held at the Glenbow Museum. And it was where women were going to learn how to make a porn, like make your own film, basically. But it wasn't going to really be porn. It was just a way of being shocking, This poster was seen by a local talk show host. And when he actually looked at the poster, he took a lot of it out of context. And he saw things like baby dyke theory. And he'd be like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean a bunch of people going to convert young girls into being lesbians? Like, it was this thing that was taken out of context, and he was doing it to, of course, create publicity, right? And it grew and it blew up. It got to the point where the mainstream media wanted to interview us about this festival and what was it doing, and was, it's taxpayers' dollars. Are you creating pornography? Like, what are you doing? Which I realized, even today, our industry is misunderstood, because it's not just cows and horses running around in fields, and it's not just oil coming out of the ground. When you're a creative filmmaker, there's always this assumption that somehow we're doing something bad, offside, pornographic. And it was great, We would get people together, we get women together, we would have theme nights of movies, and then we also had what we called Dyke Night, which was a Thursday night, and it would be 400 women from who knows where in Calgary would come to that night to watch, lesbian work. And there was no internet at the time to be able to see work. So we would have to reach out to distributors across the country. We would get screeners. We would get together in small groups, and we would watch shows and we would talk about them. And so it was really exciting because we were in our 20s and we were basically creating, right? We were experiencing in real time what it meant to understand what it meant to be gay, but also to create a venue in which other people could come and see themselves and celebrate themselves together. Like, we don't even have that today, right? The internet has been really good, but it's also been really terrible because it's segregated everyone and put them into their little silos of just sitting by themselves and watching things. But part of the joy of being part of Herland was getting together.
Whether the origins are Indigenous, diasporic, or neither, women have brought and continue to bring so much to Alberta's film industry. We'd like to thank Sandi Summers and Michelle Wong for offering their time and perspective as we took a look back on the queer femme film pioneering in this province. In Part 5, The Prairie Problem, we're mixing up the format a little bit. We'll get a snapshot of Alberta's current independent filmscape and the complicated predicament of securing funding through group discourse from 3 different Calgary-based filmmakers.
There's this girl we're working with in LA who is like a writer, and then we connected with her, and then we were like, let's make like a pilot, let's make a proof of concept, and then we can try to sell this. And then she was like, how much will it cost to make like a proof that's 10 minutes, right? And then we were like, this much dollars. So let's table this project for like a year to go find the money. Here's some, we can help with granting, because in Canada we can have grants. I know in LA that's not a thing. And then 48 hours, this girl comes back and she's like, okay, I found my investors, I have the money. What? Right? And I was like, it was so crazy. Like, I thought I was like hallucinating. Yeah, I was like, what do you mean you found the money? What do you mean you found the money? Right? And she was like, yeah, like I, spoke to some guys like in banking and this and that, and like kind of was like, blah, 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 this is how much it's going to take to make the proof. And like, she like found, I don't know, like she found like 40,000 USD in 48 hours. And it was like, how did you do that, madam? But that is not a thing here, right? Like the idea that I have, like, I could have a magical idea and like I get a bunch of rich people in the room and just be like, hey guys, you want to throw some money in the bowl so I can make
where are these
it?
Rich people? Can we figure out?
Where are they? Like, where are like the investors who aren't like the granting bodies who just kind of understand the value of art and how it can push a city?
Stay with us. Homesteads to Hollywood is a CJSW original recorded and produced in Calgary, Alberta. Our outreach coordinator is Natalie Schmidt. Audio editing is from Maria Pletneva. Assistant production and research from Ingrid Vargas, and is executively produced by myself, Liam Daw. Our theme song is Clean Conscience by Calgary's Young Neighbors. Music for this episode, also out of Calgary, comes from Brass Lip. Film clips used during this episode, in order of appearance, are from Sandi Summers' feature Haley Rose and Michelle Wong's documentary Return Home.